What if the fear of aging is not a warning, but an invitation? What if the quiet anxiety you feel when you notice time passing, when your body changes, when your energy shifts, when the future feels closer than the past, is not something to run from, but something gently asking for your attention? Most people fear aging in silence. They smile on the outside, but inside they carry questions they rarely speak aloud. Questions like, am I becoming irrelevant? Did I live fully enough? What happens when I can no longer be who I used to be? Society does not help us with these questions. It glorifies youth. It rushes time. It teaches us to resist aging as if it were a mistake, something to hide, fix, or delay. But Buddhism offers a radically different understanding. In Buddhist wisdom, aging is not the enemy. Fear is not a flaw, and suffering is not a personal failure. The Buddha did not promise a life without aging, illness, or death. Instead, he offered something far more powerful, a path to freedom within these realities. This video is not about denying fear. It is not about pretending you feel peaceful all the time. And it is not about forcing yourself to accept aging before you are ready. This is about understanding your fear deeply, compassionately, and honestly through the lens of the Four Noble Truths. These truths are not religious rules, they are observations about the human heart. And when applied gently, they can transform your relationship with time, change, and aging itself. Listen slowly. Let the words arrive without pressure. Allow this to feel less like a lesson and more like a quiet conversation between your awareness and your life as it is now. You are not late, you are not broken, and your story is not fading. Let us begin. Part 1. The First Noble Truth. Acknowledging the suffering of aging. The first noble truth is simple, yet profound. Life includes suffering. In Buddhism, this suffering is called dukkha. It does not mean constant pain. It means unease, dissatisfaction, the subtle ache of wanting life to be different than it is. The fear of aging lives here. It shows up quietly, in the way you compare your present self to your past, in the way you worry about becoming dependent, in the way you fear losing relevance, independence, beauty, or purpose. Many people try to silence this fear. They distract themselves. They stay busy. They tell themselves they should be grateful and move on. But Buddhism teaches something radical. Suffering does not end by ignoring it. It ends by understanding it. The fear of aging is not a weakness. It is a natural response to impermanence. You are not wrong for feeling it. When the Buddha spoke of suffering, he did not blame people for having it. He simply said, "Look, this exists." Aging brings undeniable changes. The body no longer responds the same way. Energy comes and goes. Roles shift. People leave. Certainty fades. Pretending these changes don't affect you only deepens the suffering. So the first step is not acceptance. It is honesty. Ask yourself, gently, without judgment, what exactly am I afraid of when I think about aging? Is it physical decline, loss of control, loneliness, regret, being forgotten? Let the answer arise naturally. Fear becomes overwhelming when it remains vague, but when you name it, it softens. The Buddha did not say, "Do not feel fear." He said, "See clearly." Aging hurts not because time passes, but because the mind resists what is passing. You may notice thoughts like, "I should have done more," "I am running out of time," "I am no longer who I was." These thoughts are not facts. They are mental habits shaped by comparison and attachment. The first noble truth does not ask you to fix anything yet. It simply asks you to stop pretending you are unaffected. Sit with this truth. Yes, aging can be uncomfortable. Yes, it can bring grief. Yes, it can awaken fear. And still, you are allowed to meet this fear with compassion. In Buddhism, awareness itself is healing. When you stop fighting the reality of aging, you stop adding a second layer of suffering, the suffering of resistance. You are not failing because you fear aging. You are human, and recognizing this is not pessimism, it is the beginning of freedom. Because once suffering is acknowledged honestly, it no longer controls you from the shadows. It steps into the light, where wisdom can meet it. And this leads us to the second noble truth. 2. The second noble truth. Understanding the root of the fear. The second noble truth goes deeper. It does not stop at acknowledging suffering. It asks a more difficult, more liberating question. Where does this suffering come from? According to Buddhism, suffering arises from craving, from attachment, clinging, and resistance to reality as it is. When applied to aging, this truth reveals something gentle yet powerful. The fear of aging is not caused by time itself, but by what the mind is holding on to. Most fear around aging is rooted in attachment to identity. You may be attached to who you used to be, your strength, your appearance, your productivity, your role in the world. You may be attached to how others once saw you, or how you believed life was supposed to unfold. When those images begin to shift, the mind panics, not because something terrible is happening, but because something familiar is dissolving. The mind says, "If I am not that anymore, then who am I?" And in that question, fear grows. There is also attachment to control. Aging reminds us that not everything bends to our will. The body changes without asking permission. Energy comes and goes. The future becomes less predictable. The ego finds this deeply unsettling because it survives on the illusion of control. When that illusion weakens, fear rushes in to defend it. You may notice thoughts like, "I need to stay ahead," or "I can't afford to slow down," or "If I lose this, I lose myself." These thoughts are not truths. They are attempts to hold on to certainty in an uncertain world. Another root of the fear of aging is attachment to comparison. Society trains us to measure our worth against youth, speed, novelty, and visibility. When the external world values what is new, aging can feel like disappearance. The mind absorbs these messages quietly over time. You may find yourself comparing your present to someone younger or to your own past without realizing how deeply this habit feeds suffering. Buddhism teaches that comparison is a form of craving, the craving to be other than what you are. And craving always leads to dissatisfaction, no matter how justified it feels. The Buddha did not say attachment is wrong. He said it is understandable. The mind clings because it wants safety, it wants continuity, it wants assurance that you matter. But when you cling to what cannot stay the same, fear becomes inevitable. Aging becomes frightening, not because it takes something essential away, but because it threatens the stories you told yourself about permanence. There is also a quieter attachment hidden beneath fear, attachment to time itself. The mind believes there is not enough time, or that time is running out. This creates urgency, regret, and anxiety. You may feel pressured to make aging meaningful, peaceful, or enlightened as quickly as possible. But this, too, is craving. The craving to resolve life instead of live it. Buddhism invites you to notice this pressure with kindness. You are not behind. There is no finish line you failed to reach. Understanding the second noble truth means recognizing that the fear of aging is not a single emotion. It is a web of attachments woven over many years. Attachment to identity, attachment to control, attachment to comparison, attachment to time. When you see this clearly, something shifts. The fear begins to feel less personal, less like a flaw, more like a natural response to clinging in an impermanent world. You do not need to force these attachments away. Buddhism never asks for force, it asks for awareness. Simply noticing this fear comes from holding on already loosens its grip. When you see the mechanism of suffering, you are no longer trapped inside it. You become the observer instead of the victim. Take a moment now and reflect quietly. What am I afraid of losing as I age? What part of my identity feels threatened? What expectations am I clinging to that no longer fit my life? Let these questions sit without urgency. There is no correct answer. There is only honesty. The second noble truth does not judge you for attachment. It simply shows you the cause, so you are no longer confused by the effect. And when the cause is seen clearly, a new possibility emerges, the possibility that fear does not have to dominate your relationship with aging. This brings us gently to the third noble truth, where something hopeful begins to unfold. 3. The third noble truth. The end of fear is possible. The third noble truth offers something quietly radical. After acknowledging suffering and understanding its cause, the Buddha presents a truth that can feel almost unbelievable when fear has lived in you for a long time. Suffering can end, not through denial, not through fighting reality, but through release. When applied to the fear of aging, this truth does not promise a life without change. It promises freedom from the fear that change creates. The end of fear does not mean you will never feel uncomfortable about aging again. It means aging no longer controls your inner life. The mind stops tightening around time. The heart stops bracing against the future. You begin to experience aging as movement, not as threat. This shift happens when attachment loosens and awareness deepens. In Buddhism, the ending of suffering is called nirodha. It is not an achievement, it is a natural result. When craving fades, suffering fades. When clinging releases, fear softens. This means the fear of aging is not something you must conquer. It dissolves when it is no longer fed. Imagine holding sand tightly in your fist. The tighter you grip, the more it slips through your fingers. Aging is like this. The more desperately you try to preserve youth, certainty, or control, the more anxious you become. But when you open your hand, the struggle ends. The sand rests where it is. Nothing is lost. The tension simply disappears. The third noble truth invites you to experience who you are without clinging to who you were. This can feel unfamiliar at first. The mind may ask, if I let go of these identities, what remains? Buddhism answers softly, what remains is awareness, presence, and peace. You are not reduced when attachments fall away. You are revealed. As attachment loosens, something surprising happens. Aging begins to feel less personal. Instead of thinking, this is happening to me, you begin to see aging as a universal process. Every living being moves through time. Every form changes. When you stop isolating your experience, fear loses its sharp edge. You realize you are not being singled out by life. You are participating in it. The end of fear also comes from understanding that you are not your thoughts about aging. Thoughts arise automatically, shaped by memory, culture, and habit. They say things like, I am becoming invisible, or my best years are behind me. But these are mental events, not truths. When you stop believing every thought, space opens. In that space, fear has less ground to stand on. There is deep relief in this truth. You no longer have to convince yourself that aging is beautiful or meaningful every moment. You simply stop arguing with reality. You stop negotiating with time. And in that surrender, peace begins to appear naturally. The third noble truth also reveals that joy is not lost with youth. It simply changes form. The excitement of becoming is replaced by the depth of being. Instead of chasing experiences, you begin to inhabit them fully. Instead of proving your worth, you rest in it. This is not a lesser joy. It is quieter, steadier, and more sustainable. You may notice moments when fear loosens on its own, perhaps when you are fully present with someone you love, or when you are absorbed in a simple activity, or when you feel gratitude without trying to. In these moments, aging disappears. Time softens. You are simply alive. These moments are not accidents. They are glimpses of what life feels like without attachment. The Buddha did not describe enlightenment as becoming extraordinary. He described it as the ending of unnecessary suffering. When fear of aging fades, nothing dramatic needs to replace it. There is just ease. There is room to breathe. There is acceptance without resignation. It is important to understand that the end of fear is not something you force yourself into. You do not repeat affirmations until fear disappears. You do not shame yourself for feeling anxious. You allow fear to arise, observe it, and let it pass without feeding it. This gentle non-participation weakens fear over time. There may still be moments of sadness when you notice change, moments of grief for what has passed. Buddhism does not deny this, but grief without resistance becomes tenderness. Sadness without clinging becomes wisdom. Aging, seen clearly, opens the heart instead of closing it. The third noble truth reminds you that peace is not waiting at the end of life. It is available when you stop fighting life. You do not have to wait until fear is gone to live well. You live well by not letting fear dictate how you relate to yourself. Sit with this understanding. The fear of aging is not permanent. It is conditioned, and what is conditioned can change. When you stop feeding fear with attachment, comparison, and resistance, it naturally weakens, and in its place, something simpler appears. Presence, clarity, a quiet sense of belonging in your own life. This truth prepares you for the fourth noble truth, where the Buddha offers not a philosophy but a practical path, a way of living that supports this freedom, day by day, breath by breath. 4. The fourth noble truth, the path that transforms your relationship with aging. The fourth noble truth is where understanding becomes lived experience. After recognizing suffering, seeing its cause, and realizing that freedom is possible, the Buddha offers a path, not as a set of rigid rules, but as a way of relating to life that gently reduces fear. This path is traditionally called the Noble Eightfold Path, but here we will explore it in a way that speaks directly to the fear of aging, in a way that can be practiced quietly in everyday life. The first element of this path is right understanding. This means seeing aging clearly, without distortion. Aging is not a personal failure. It is not a punishment. It is not evidence that your value is fading. It is simply the nature of embodied life. When you understand this deeply, you stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and begin to say, "This is what it means to be alive." Fear softens when life is no longer taken personally. Right understanding also means recognizing that peace does not come from controlling outcomes, but from aligning with reality. You cannot stop time, but you can stop fighting it. Each time you remind yourself that change is natural, you remove a layer of tension from your experience. Over time, this understanding becomes embodied. It moves from idea to felt truth. The second element is right intention. Intention shapes how you meet aging. You may not control what happens to your body or circumstances, but you can choose your inner orientation. Right intention means approaching aging with kindness instead of fear, curiosity instead of resistance, patience instead of urgency. It means quietly committing to not harming yourself with harsh inner dialogue. Each gentle intention weakens the habit of fear. Next is right speech, which includes the way you speak to yourself. Many people unintentionally reinforce fear by the language they use. "I'm too old for this. I'm past my prime. It's all downhill from here." These phrases may feel harmless, but they shape perception. Right speech invites you to notice these patterns and soften them. You do not need to replace them with forced positivity. Simply speak more truthfully. "I am changing. This is unfamiliar. I am learning to live differently." Language that is honest and kind creates mental spaciousness. Right action follows naturally. This is about living in a way that supports peace rather than anxiety. As you age, right action may mean simplifying rather than expanding, resting rather than pushing, choosing depth over speed. It means caring for your body not as something to control, but as something to respect. Gentle movement, nourishing food, and adequate rest become acts of wisdom, not attempts to fight aging. Then there is right livelihood, which in later life often shifts from productivity to presence. Even if your work changes or ends, your way of contributing does not disappear. Offering patience, listening deeply, sharing experience, and embodying calm are all forms of livelihood in the Buddhist sense. When you stop measuring worth by output, fear of aging loses one of its strongest foundations. Right effort is not about trying harder, it is about trying wisely. This means noticing when the mind is feeding fear and gently redirecting it. Not forcefully, not aggressively, simply choosing not to dwell in stories that amplify anxiety. Right effort respects your limits. It allows you to rest without guilt and to grow without pressure. Right mindfulness is perhaps the most powerful support against the fear of aging. Mindfulness keeps you anchored in the present, where fear has less power. When you notice sensations, emotions, and thoughts as they arise, you stop being carried away by them. You feel change without turning it into catastrophe. You observe aging without turning it into identity. Each mindful breath brings you back to what is real rather than what is imagined. Finally, there is right concentration, which develops through moments of stillness and attention. This does not require formal meditation, though meditation can help. It can arise when you are fully absorbed in a simple activity: walking, listening, breathing. In these moments, the sense of time softens, fear recedes. You experience life directly, without commentary. This is not escape, it is intimacy with the present. Walking this path does not eliminate aging. It transforms your relationship with it. Fear no longer dominates. Resistance loosens. Acceptance grows naturally. You begin to trust life again, not because you know what will happen, but because you know you can meet whatever happens with awareness and compassion. The fourth noble truth reminds you that freedom is not found by reaching a certain age or state of mind. It is found by how you walk with each moment. Aging becomes less about what you are losing and more about how you are living. And in this way, the path itself becomes the peace you are searching for. As we come to the end of this reflection, take a moment to notice how you feel right now, not how you think you should feel, just how you actually feel. Aging has not been solved or fixed in this space. It has been met, seen, understood with a little more kindness, and that alone is meaningful. The fear of aging does not disappear all at once. It softens gradually each time you choose awareness over resistance, compassion over judgment, presence over worry. The Four Noble Truths do not ask you to become fearless. They invite you to become honest, gentle, and free in the midst of change. Aging then becomes not something to endure, but something to walk with, slowly, consciously, and with dignity. You are not behind in life. You are not becoming less. You are deepening. Every breath you take is still part of your path, still part of your becoming in a quieter, wiser way. There is nothing you need to prove, nothing you need to outrun, just this moment and your willingness to be here with it. If this reflection brought you calm, clarity, or a sense of being understood, you are warmly invited to support our work by subscribing to the Mindfulness channel. Your presence helps us continue sharing gentle teachings, Buddhist wisdom, and moments of stillness with people around the world. Thank you for listening. May you meet each season of life with patience. May you age with peace. May you walk forward with a softened heart.